Since the atom of the indivisible individual was split over 150 years ago, there's a couple of terms that have sprung up to give a name to that no man's land beyond the white picket fence of consciousness. Out there in the wilderness beyond our perfect rational selves, the two most common terms we find are subconscious and unconscious. To your average person on the street, this difference in terminology might seem to be a bit of a non-difference, but I hope you'll agree with me by the end of this episode that there's a massive sociological and philosophical difference between these two terms. And so with that in mind, let's explore the strange meandering history of these terms, who's using them today, and which term you should be using. Pierre Janet is a name we should all know, but unfortunately he has faded into obscurity. He was overshadowed by Freud, who he claimed, and not without some reason, it should be noted, had plagiarized a lot of his work. Jung studied with him in 1902 and derived his idea of complexes from him, and Adler also acknowledged that he picked up his central concept of the inferiority complex from him. Anyway, this great founder of psychology was a Frenchman, and his term for the great beyond was the French subconscient, which our English subconscious is a direct translation of. Way back in 1893, Sigmund Freud used the terms subconscious, das Unterbewusst, and unconscious, das Unbewusst, interchangeably in his writings. Later, he settled on the term unconscious to avoid confusion. In 1927's The Question of Lay Analysis, he explained this reasoning by saying, "If someone talks of subconsciousness, I cannot tell whether he means the term topographically, to indicate something lying in the mind beneath consciousness, or qualitatively, to indicate another consciousness, a subterranean one, as it were. He's probably not clear about any of it. The only trustworthy antithesis is between conscious and unconscious." Let's attempt to translate this into normal people speak. Freud is drawing a distinction between two models of this space beyond consciousness. The first is a hierarchical model. Think of his iceberg with the unconscious id beneath the surface and the conscious ego above the surface. This is what he means by a topographical model. On the other hand, we have the qualitative variety, which is more like Jung's complexes or archetypes. These can be relatively independent in the psyche and not hierarchically inferior in the Freudian animal id versus human consciousness sense. Not sure that was quite normal people speak, but what can you do? It's still philosophy. The point is that Freud felt the word subconscious muddied the waters too much, and he decided to simplify things by drawing the simple, broad distinction between that which is conscious and that which isn't. That way, it limited the impact of the topographical image that came packaged up with the term subconscious. Jung and Adler followed Freud in this, and so the bottom line is that when it comes to psychoanalysis and depth psychology, using the word subconscious is wrong. And according to Freudian scholar Peter Gay, it's something you'll want to avoid. Gay calls the use of subconscious when the writer means unconscious a common and telling mistake, and when the term is employed to say something Freudian, it is proof that the writer has not read his Freud. But the word subconscious didn't disappear in a puff of smoke when Freud chose the term unconscious. So what gives? Who is using which term? A good rule of thumb for where you'll find subconscious and where you'll find unconscious is the context. Unconscious is more common in professional contexts where mental functioning is the subject matter and where there's more of a theoretical edge. This applies beyond psychoanalytical circles in fields like psychiatry, psychology, and neuroscience. Unconscious is a technical term. Subconscious, on the other hand, is more common in non-technical writings. It is a common term in spirituality and self-help writings. It's also the more common term in hypnosis and NLP, which work primarily with this level of the mind. It's a similar story to what happened with the word ego. There's Freud's technical use of the term, which, as we explored in the episode on the id, ego, and superego, is more of a heroic figure caught between the superego, the id, and reality. In stark contrast to this ego, there's the spiritual and self-help ego, which is, well, the enemy. It's the demonic, selfish part of us that is the root of all evil in the world and must be destroyed. This is more or less the same story as the subconscious-unconscious distinction. The psychoanalytical schools of Freud and Jung are more theoretical and analytical. They're more concerned with mapping out this new domain of the psyche and figuring out how it works. The spirituality and self-help gurus, on the other hand, are more pragmatic. They want to bring about transformation, and so they are less concerned with a disinterested scientific exploration. And these different contexts lead to two different flavors. In the psychoanalytic traditions, the unconscious has its own consciousness and agendas. That is to say that the ego consciousness is not the only consciousness operating within the individual. This is particularly clear in Jung's concept of the archetypes, especially the self. These are parts of the mind outside of the ego, which in some sense have their own consciousness, their own center. They're different consciousnesses inhabiting the same body. Subconscious, on the other hand, is not seen as a separate consciousness. The authors in these fields see the subconscious more like a machine. It's more like a computer than a consciousness. This computer collects all the data from your senses, and all of this is stored permanently in the mind. The spirituality and self-help crew are looking to reprogram this layer of the mind. They're concerned with changing their beliefs. These beliefs are what is keeping the individual from success and happiness. Change the beliefs and you change the results. As well as this, it is common for these authors to believe that the subconscious connects to something beyond the individual. This is the mechanism by which the law of attraction is supposed to work. The subconscious taps into transpersonal universal frequencies. By harnessing the subconscious, you are tapping into this universal energy field, and it is out of this that manifestation occurs. The cosmic law is that like attracts like, and so thoughts of love attract love, and thoughts of abundance attract abundance, and the same goes for misery, happiness, and everything else. What emerges then is a distinction whereby the psychoanalytical unconscious of Freud and Jung is a domain with its own autonomy in some ways. There are other desires aside from our own going on down there. The wholeness of the Enlightenment's rational self has been shattered, and we see that we are not one self plotting our course, but a host of competing drives and complexes with their own agendas. By contrast, the spiritual New Age self-help subconscious frame keeps this wholeness of a rational self. We're the only person at home in the psyche, and it's only that we've got this computer keeping count of our previous habit patterns and beliefs. There's no need to form a relationship with this thing any more than there is with Alexa or Siri. It's just a matter of reprogramming the subconscious machine so that it is no longer holding us back from where we want to go. And if we are really good at reprogramming it, then we could hit the jackpot and align with the universe and manifest everything we want and live happily ever after. In conclusion then, which one is correct? Subconscious or unconscious? And the answer is that it depends. If you're thinking of a neutral computer that you can reprogram for different results, then you'll want to use the term subconscious. But if you want to talk about Freud or Jung's work, then you'll want to stick to the term unconscious. And the same goes for more technical, scientific schools of thought. At their origin, towards the end of the 19th century, the two terms were effectively synonymous. But as time has passed, the gap between the two terms has grown greater. If you find yourself talking to a philosopher or a scientist, then you should probably use the term unconscious. But if you're giving a talk at your local cult, personal development seminar, or hippie commune, then you'd be better sticking with the term subconscious. That's everything for this episode of The Living Philosophy. I'd like to thank David Pilibosian, Ibisophiisa, and all the other patrons for their support. And if you'd like to get access to bonus content, to join the Living Philosophy Book Club, to watch long-form podcast interviews with other creators and experts, to join in live stream monthly Q&As, Or if you just want to support the channel and get your name in the credits like these wonderful people, then you can head over to Patreon. As ever, if you have any thoughts, insights, or feedback, love to hear from you down in the comments. Otherwise, I shall see you next time. Thank you for watching.